In this video, I'll be walking through and giving my opinion on these two free plugins from Analog Obsession, Frank and FrankCS. So let's get into it. First things first, what exactly is Frank? Basically, you can think of Frank like a modular synthesizer for EQs, where we're just plugging in different EQ bands from different models throughout history. So we have a high pass filter that's related to the Helios. We have, the low frequency band, which is related to the low shelf on a Pultec. And the same thing is true for this supposed low pass filter that's related to the attenuation selector over here. We have the mid band is related to the API, and I believe it's preset at that 1.5, 1.6. And then we also have the high shelf from a Neve 1073. So I don't know how clear these images are going to be, but that's essentially what we have. So it's Analog Obsession has gone to the trouble of determining what module we would want where. And this is based on history and based on what other mix engineers have tended to do in the past. And then with the channel strip version, it's basically the same thing. We just have a little bit more control in terms of variation on selecting frequencies, whereas this is preset. And then the channel strip also has a preamp and a compressor that you can take advantage of if you want to. So what paid plugins are closest related to Frank? The OG is probably the Man American EQ, which as you can see here, they've taken 6 EQs and, spread it out across the bands. This one does sound really good. It's one of the Waves plugins I would certainly recommend. Acoustica Audio has done something like this with the Pensado EQ. Again, same idea. They've chosen the equalizers for you, so you don't get any control of that. But then, obviously you can adjust your gain levels accordingly. And then with the DMG, this is the really deep one where you have all sorts of different models and curves. But in this case, nothing is really preset. This one's truly modular where you can mix and match and pick based on what you want. This would be the most advanced one because you kind of have to have a very specific idea of the curve and what you want at a specific band for whatever reason. So this one's definitely the more advanced. The other ones are very much just drop in and you can start adjusting the gains and seeing if you like the sound of it. And overall, Frank and these other two plugins are more like your tone shaper EQ. So it's not like if you're hearing some kind of a resonant frequency or something that you're trying to pinpoint and just remove, you'd use something more digital for that. But when it comes to general tone shaping and more of these supposed musical curves, these are definitely good plugins to pull to. I know it drives some people crazy when I do this, but we're just going to be applying our plugins to the master bus of this little loop that we have going. And before we jump into it, just very quickly for a little visual analogy, we can see in this plugin, when we jump to the various models, we can see the different shapes that we're getting, despite all of the parameters being identical. So in essence, that's kind of what Frank is doing. It's making those selections for us, but it's almost like we could imagine that we could choose the American model for low, and then we could choose the Japanese model for mid and something else for high. So obviously there's a lot more nuance and complexity in real life with real working equalizers, but that's the general idea. So now with Frank, we'll just kind of go from left to right. We have this Helios at 50 Hertz, and then we can determine how much we want to cut out. If we want to enable the oversampling, we click on this button right here. So let's go ahead and just start playing this back, and we'll probably take out, 6 or 9 dB at 50 Hertz. And there you go. And now we can probably add some of that sub back in here with our low band, where we have something more like a Pultec where we can do a shelf boost and then immediately after that a little bit of a dip and a cut. So again, this is preset to 60. We can't change that on this model. And nice and smooth. And then we'll do a little bit of a cut immediately after. Actually doesn't sound very good. And this would be an example where we maybe would want to use FrankCS because we could change what that frequency is. So I'm not loving the sound of it on this particular source material, but just for reference. The next thing we have is the mid, and this is the like API at 1.6K or 1600 hertz. And we can just either gain or cut. So let's see what this sounds like. To be honest, I might even cut a little bit of that. And then up next, we have our high shelf, and I think this is at 12K, but we can double check that. And we can see that, yep, this N-type high shelf is at 12K. Give ourselves some sheen. And then finally, if we want to do a little bit of a roll off at the top, we could do that here with this attenuation set at 20K. And that's nice and silky. And we can hear the results of that. So this doesn't sound spectacular. Depending on the source material that you have, it's either going to work or it's not. And I would say in this particular case, Frank may not be the best option, but FrankCS probably will be because we can dial in our frequencies to where we want them. So let's go ahead and do a similar exercise here with FrankCS. So I'll just go ahead and start by turning the oversampling on and turning the compressor off. Now remember, it's the same models. Not that that really matters when you're making these determinations, but just for reference, we have the Helios, we have the Pultec, we have the API, we have the Neve, and then we have the Pultec again. So let's go ahead and just get started. And there you go. I think we were able to get something a little bit more flattering this time, and we could actually change and choose the frequency that we wanted. Now, additionally, in FrankCS, we have the option to choose a preamp model. I think we'll go with tube. And then we also can choose kind of like the detector circuit, whether we want to be tube or solid state. I'm also going to choose tube. And I'm really just doing that based on this piece of audio that's coming in. This to me feels like something that should be warmer than necessarily like harder. And that's why I'm going with the tube. All right, so let's go ahead and we can play with this compressor a little bit. Very straightforward. If you go to the page, we can see a little more information about the actual compressor, but inside of the interface, it will also read us out the value time-wise if we're looking for that. So let's go ahead and maybe I'll set this up to be just a little more gluey. Or we could go for something maybe a little more punchy. That doesn't sound good at all. It's too fast. way it was originally. So to bypass the whole plugin, we'll have to do it from down here. It's probably still a little too much compression. And again, probably more of a channel strip style compressor than necessarily a bus compressor, but you get the idea and what it sounds like. And I think this is actually quite flattering. So I think when you're looking for more of like, you know, analog curves or just an analog vibe, or to be perfectly honest, even just like an analog workflow, something like Frank or FrankCS is not a bad option at all. So the final thing I thought we could do is we could emulate this same kind of workflow using individual processors. And we'll start out with this kind of Helios here. And all we really want to be taking advantage of is this section down here. So let's take a listen. So that really cleaned that up. And then we need to follow this up with a Pultec. So for now, we only want to take advantage of this little section here. We'll come back for the attenuation in just a bit. Still too much. And we'll follow this up with our API at 1.5K. Again, with this source material, doing anything at 1.5K doesn't sound very good. If anything, maybe I'll just take out 2 dB. And now in this case, we're going to use the 1084 because I can select 12K with this, as you see. Not loving the sound of what that's doing. And then finally, we'll bring in one more instance of a Pultec. And so we've set it to 20 and we've added a little bit of attenuation there. And we've basically recreated the Frank channel strip here, going Helios into Pultec, into an API, into a Neve, and then back into a Pultec again. So we can bypass all of these. And we definitely need to add a little bit of gain at the end. And my way to do that inside of this AFX to DAW is I'm just bringing on this power feed forward compressor and then using this gain knob. So we can listen to this now on and off. And that sounds pretty good as well. And personally, my favorite is actually probably us recreating this channel strip here in the AFX to DAW. But in real life, would this ever be something that I would do? Probably not. And that's going to do it for this video. Like always, since this is free, I'd recommend that you download it and give it a try and determine whether or not it's something that you want to include in your plugin collection. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.